So, dude, I just typed in trade chat. I'm looking to buy a level 60 to level 70 boost, and then some guy just randomly DM'd me that for 120k gold, I could AFK and get boosted from 60 to 70. It's actually kind of sick.
Oh, I got one for 110k last week. You're getting scammed.
What the? I'm getting scammed.
Yeah.
Okay, so this week, basically what we're going to be talking about is the fastest process to gear fresh characters. We talked a little bit about gearing in one of the most recent episodes, talking about like, oh, was the gearing system too fast? But we really want to talk about the way that you can get your alts geared up as quickly as possible. I geared up a Shadow Priest from like fresh boosted to 440 item level in like 2 weeks. I know that Dratnos is much faster than I am, even though gearing some
Oh
of
no,
his stuff.
I'm doing more rats more slowly to kind of prolong the pain on more of my friends.
Okay.
So it's a different process.
More rats more slowly is the Dratnos way.
Yeah.
So before we talk about like necessarily the ways that in like the process to actually get up to that 440, 443-ish item level range, the only big piece of news in regards to gearing this week actually is quite an important one. There's a new track coming 10.1.5 for the gear upgrade system, and it's called the Myth track. And this allows any item level piece of gear that would drop at 441 or higher to be able to be upgraded to 447. And so this is probably the most positive thing for the first few bosses of Mythic Raid, but this also includes things such as Great Vault from 16s and higher also.
Yeah, and I guess also the heroic very rare items off the last two bosses.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not something I considered. Okay.
I mean, it's not a
yeah.
big deal, right? It's 3 item levels on those pieces, and it's not really a huge deal in terms of what's BIS or anything.
Yeah.
But it is really nice for those first few bosses. It means if you're in a guild, like a mythic progression guild that was thinking about extending, that decision's gotten a little bit harder because the first few bosses are now dropping a little bit better loot. But realistically, it hasn't changed too much of what's BIS, which is still like 447 crafted gear is still equal item level and customizable stats, and is probably better.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about ways that you can gear a character, and I think that we're gonna start like the very beginning, talk about like the early gearing processes, what you should be looking to do if you have like a completely fresh character, and then work our way up to some of the more important things
Yeah.
as you get later on. So what is like? So you freshly boost a character. I guess the first thing for me is I get my 5 sparks from last season and craft those into 395 pieces.
That's an option. Yeah, my first step is usually auction house, and then you can buy 379s in every slot.
Of the greens,
Or
right?
discount, you can buy them 376, and they're cheaper usually. So
Okay.
that's, I think, the first step I would recommend. You can also bypass this in certain slots with, as you said, the Spark of Ingenuity. You can get your 5 of those and craft. That's pretty expensive though, right? Like the Spark crafts themselves often end up having some reasonably expensive mats, so that might not be something you're super interested in. You can also get around it with the Forbidden Reach BOA Primalist gear tokens
That's true.
that
Yeah.
you may or may not have access to. And what you might want to think about as well is if your character is interested in being an Onyx Amulet character and you need to do that grind, you may pick up some of that stuff on the character while doing that anyway. So
Yeah. So I think that like from getting a character from like freshly leveled to, that 380 item level mark, it's actually pretty fast. And
yeah, I mean, you can buy that basically from the auction house straight up for 10,000 gold or something.
Yeah.
Get all the slots. Yeah.
Okay, so from that point, then you're able to actually kind of get into LFR pretty soon. What's the minimum eye level on LFR? It's like 386, something like that. Yeah.
That's a good question, and one that would be good to have the answer to. I'll log into my biggest rat and check for us. But either way, the big thing about LFR gear is that it does go up to 424
Correct.
on the upgrade track using just Whelplings and Drake's Crests, which you can get from the campaign, which you can get from open world content. So doing an LFR clear is very good. Starting in 2 weeks from this video coming out as well, LFR Sarkareth is going to be available as well. And LFR Sarkareth is going to have multiple good things gated behind it. Omni token chance obviously is nice, but a big thing is if you do the full campaign, you get a quest to kill Sarkareth for an Enchanted Worms aspect crest, which normally I recommend against crafting those for almost all characters, but getting one for free is pretty nice. That's a nice jump start to your gear, and that lets you craft straight to 437 when you get a Spark of Shadow Flame, which you can also get a bunch of those pretty early. The catch up on getting the ones that you don't already have is very high, and of course you can also be doing the weeklies and stuff to get some. All right, Raid Finder. I can queue for Raid Finder and on a character that is eye level 387. So yeah, it is not a
Yeah,
high.
it's like I thought it was like 384 or something like that. It is like relatively low. Like if you craft pieces using the Sparks of Ingenuity from last season and you buy those greens off the auction house like Dratnos was talking about, you're gonna have the item level to be able to queue for LFR. I think the big thing whenever you freshly leveled a character, like the thing that's going to be the slowest in the gearing process is getting your 4 set. That requires a little bit of finagling to be able to get into the raid, but like once you hit like a certain item level point, then it starts to become like exponentially easier, and then you like almost get your 4 set immediately.
Well, and the Catalyst is out as well.
The Catalyst is out next week
from the time of recording this, so depending on when you're watching this, that may already be out as well. And you can catalyze, just find any item like on the champion track and throw it in the Catalyst, and that's going to be good, right? Like that can go up to 437 for you eventually, and that's really high item level for content that you can get from all kinds of sources.
Okay, so after you have done LFR, you've crafted 424 sparks with the Sparks of Shadow Flame from this season. You've exhausted all of the stuff that we've recently talked about. What's the next process? Is it just jumping into Mythic Plus, or is it jumping into normal raid?
Yeah, LFR into normal raid, into heroic raid, into mythic raid is obviously like there's more gear every step of the way there. I think normal is a really good place to go this season because the normal raid is low enough barrier to entry that the groups have a high success rate from what I've seen in Group Finder, a little bit higher than like heroic, and it's a little bit easier to get in. So you might want to, if you're a little bit under geared, just create your own normal run, and has a pretty good chance of being successful because it's hard to get invited if you're low item level, but it's easy to make a run that will work. Obviously, that's like you're shouldering some organizational responsibility that not all people are interested in, but it can be a really good way to gear. And if you want to scum it up a little bit, you can invite nobody on your tier token and have all the ones that drop on your token go to you.
It really just kind of depends on the people that you invite to your group too. It's not necessary. I wouldn't even say necessarily like last season. I would say that inviting people on your tier token would almost be a mistake. Whereas this season, a lot of people already have the 4 set, especially this late into the season. If they're doing either normal or heroic pretty consistently, they've already gotten their tier. And so if you just like armory them real quick, they might not even be rolling against you in a lot of aspects for this tier. So it might be just something that you can check out pretty quickly and see, oh, okay, this person already has 2 or 3 pieces of tier. I know they're not going to be rolling against me.
I would also say there's a good, like the campaign quests for the Zeralek Cavern are good. The new blue Dragonflight quest line is actually also pretty good. There's a lot of Drake fragments behind that one too. So Drake fragments and like some good, I think, adventure and maybe even veteran gear you can get from that. So that's another good place if you want to just do some solo content to get your character set up. But yeah, ultimately you are going to want to be getting into Mythic Plus or normal raid to start getting those upgrades. 11 key spam can be a good place to get into, especially if you can kind of jumpstart it and get your own key and start listing your own key and just keep lowering it to 11. And you can find good people applying to those groups because they're on the hunt for the Worm's Crests at the easiest level.
So okay, after you've done like after you've exhausted like the raid that you can do for the week, I think the thing that's next going to be holding you back is probably the crests. And it's most likely to be the Worm's Crests, although the Aspect Crests are pretty challenging.
I mean, the Aspect Crests are harder on new characters. Yeah, what I would recommend is if you're trying to like actually super gear up a new character, don't spend any Aspect Crests on taking things to 441. Instead, you want to basically wait on all of them to be made into Enchanted Aspect Crests. That's going to be their best use. In terms of bang for your buck. Yeah,
so then you are able to craft, at least at time of recording this, 3 pieces into 447 gear almost immediately. And more often than not, that you should be looking like a weapon, and then
starting with a 2-handed weapon is actually a really efficient way to do it in terms of your crest, because it costs you 2 sparks, but it only costs you 1 crest. So that can be a power move. Obviously, I mean, getting an Enchanted Aspect Crest early in a character's lifespan does require you to be doing like high keys or Mythic Raid, neither of which are necessarily likely unless you've got unless you're like a Mythic Raid reroll alt that can get people to carry you through those things. But yeah, if you can, that's obviously really good. even the Drake's crests can be pretty useful for you early. Like Drake's Whelplings and Drakes are what you use to upgrade LFR gear. So, and you can get those from like campaign quests and outdoor world content, which is really nice. You can even buy them. There's a vendor that a lot of us used in the first week and kind of forgot about in the Loam Niffin hub that lets you trade some Zeralek Caverns currency for extra Drake fragments, which can be nice.
After you've hit this process that Dratnos and I are talking about, you're probably going to be bouncing around the 425 to 430 item level range. Then once you're at that 425 to 430 item level range, you're pretty easily able to do somewhere in the order of probably like, 11s to 20s, depending on like who you're playing with, what groups you're able to get invited to, that kind of thing. But you should be able to at least do 11s to 20s. And at that point, you're able to actually farm the worm crests and those aspect crests.
Yeah, 11 is the sweet spot for the start of this process, and then once you
17s
you can farm up to basically 440 and 11s, right? Like the gear that drops there goes up to 437. Your Great Vault gear is going to go up to 441 out of that, I think. And then also you are getting these crests that let you craft up pretty high as well. Once you can, making the jump up to 16 or 17 is the next kind of big jump. And then from there, yeah, there is value in going up to 20. Although once patch 10.1.5 comes out, that's not even a big deal anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the myth track means that the Great Vault isn't even that much better. And just farming pure 16s and 17s, like 17s for hero track and a dungeon gear, or 16s just for aspect crests, that can be a great way to get that done. Obviously, this is like by the time your character can do this, your character can also be doing heroic raid, and heroic raid is a really good source of items as well. And that heroic raid's a little bit harder. Trying to like rat your way through a heroic is
this is hard. Yeah,
that's much harder than ratting your way through a normal. Ratting your way through a normal is pretty easy, but even if you're like the group leader, it can be hard to trick people into carrying your rat through heroic.
So, what do you think is the best way of getting like the? Okay, so there's a free piece of tier from either getting AOTC or getting 2K Mythic Plus rating or getting 1600 in PvP, I think is the number in Arena. What do you think the easiest way to like do this is? Do you think it's actually just, you're probably going to end up spending a week and a half trying to gear this character and then you're eventually going to be able to do a heroic? I mean, I've seen a decent amount of Sarkareth heroics be pretty successful, but it just kind of depends on what group you have.
Yeah, notably, you need to do the whole 9 bosses, not just Sarkareth. But if you can do Sarkareth, you can definitely do the other bosses. I think the
2K
easiest. Rating? I mean, the easiest one I think is probably the Mythic Plus one.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, they're all definitely doable. Especially the PvP one is a very low bar in terms of PvP rating. Just not a lot of people do PvP, but the PvP one is actually really easy to get early on because you can craft a bunch of PvP gear that scales up to pretty high in PvP. So. That's definitely a good option if that's your cup of tea. That's probably the fastest way you could do it on a fresh character if you were equally good at PvP raid and Mythic Plus. But yeah, I mean, there's also... I think all of them are reasonably balanced, but I would expect that, like if you're spamming a lot of keys, definitely getting it from the M+ score is the easiest way.
Okay, so at that point, like basically we're looking to upgrade our gear to... 441 now. Now that we've reached a certain point, we're looking to upgrade our gear to 441. I would say it's like looking and simming your drop optimizer, looking at BIS lists and stuff like that, trying to figure out what dungeons you actually need loot from, and going and doing those dungeons on a 17 is probably your best bet because there's going to be some high value pieces in Mythic Plus. I think for like a lot of casters, they want the spoils cache from Neltharis. Like that trinket is particularly good. If for one reason or another you didn't craft a weapon, going and getting a weapon from any of the dungeons is also super powerful for a lot of different characters. I think that those things are some of the most popular things. At some point too, you also have to craft embellishments. And if you craft a two-hander weapon, it's going to be difficult for you to slot in your embellishment depending on what embellishments are best for your class. And so you kind of have to factor that in regards to what you're spending the Sparks of Shadowflame on.
Yeah, the embellishments filling out is definitely nice. One thing you can do is, as a temporary stopgap, is just put your embellishments on your Spark of Ingenuity crafted gear.
That's true.
If you want to make like a 437 with your LFR Sarkareth Spark once that comes out, right? And you want to use two Sparks of Shadowflame and an Enchanted Worm's Crest from that to make your 437 two-hander. That can be a really good starting point, especially once the LFR wing is actually out. And then you can get your embellishment slots through just 395 Spark of Ingenuity gear, and that's definitely worth That's definitely worth something. Like the embellishments do give a few percent each, and they're nice. Some of them scale with eye level, but most of them are actually pretty good, and several of them don't even scale with eye level. So
Okay.
you don't have to worry too much about them.
So let's just summarize the process that you take. So you level the character fresh, you buy 379 or 376 greens off the auction house, you craft Spark of Ingenuity items from last season at 395 item level. Then you zone into LFR and you try to get, some gear out of the LFR run, and then you send 424 Spark of Shadow Flame crafts on things that are going to scale in the long run, right? You shouldn't be spending your Spark of Shadow Flames on things that are like immediate gains. You should be spending it on like long-term gains, such as like weapons or embellishment items.
Yeah, I think the weapon is the biggest example of like maybe the best long-term sacrifice to make for short-term value, because often like a lot of us didn't craft weapons on our mains at the start of this patch, but it's such a big power spike, and it's not like it's a bad long-term item, but the long-term play would probably be to make your two best embellishments or whatever. But I would recommend the weapon, yeah.
So like after LFR, it's probably using, like Drake's Crests and stuff like that to try to upgrade our gear a little bit and then jump into normal.
Yeah, I mean, normal raid's a great place to go. 11 keys, if you can get into them at that point, are also a great place to go. The campaign does have some stuff for you. The world boss, waiting until next reset and doing LFR again is likely to still have rewards for you, but normal raid, if you can get that done as soon as you can, is going to be big rewards. Yeah.
And then we start to hit to the point where we're like that 425 mark, and then we're really starting to get to that 11 to 17 key point where we're not upset to be doing 11s for the aspect crests, but we really want to, or the worm crest. Yeah, the worm crest. But at some point we want to be doing like 17s for the highest eye level gear and for potential aspect crests. And so then at that point we're balancing how much Mythic Plus we're doing relative to the rest of the stuff. And then after you get a certain amount of gear, then I would recommend going into Heroic, because I think Heroic is actually a little bit more of a step up than even doing 17s in terms of difficulty.
Yeah, it depends on the context. Like, the challenge is largely going to be getting into the group in both spots.
Yeah.
And in both spots, you're going to have your best bet if you have friends doing them, guild doing them, or if you have the ability to create your own group for them. That can be something like if you have the patience and to set up your own group and run it, you have some people you can invite, you know how to run that. You're able to wait a little bit of time to actually get, a good successful group going. Then that's going to mean that whichever of those you can do that for is going to be really good.
Okay. Anything else? Is there anything that you think we missed in regards to gearing?
Just remember the Onyx Amulet early on is something that a lot of classes, like if you're making a tank, a rogue, a windwalker, a rep paladin, any of that kind of stuff,
a healer,
you're going to need that Onyx Amulet eventually. It's a good thing to do early because you can do it early, and it's like a permanent bis item. So that can be something to do. If you have extra keys, they're bind on account, the vault keys, so you can send those around. And if you have extra elemental overflow on any characters, you can gamble at one of the vendors at the Forbidden Reach, one of the like rep vendors. You can gamble for more keys. So if you are low on keys, but you have extra elemental overflow on any of your characters, you can do that to send a bunch of keys to your alt, basically.
In addition to that, too, don't feel super bad about not filling up your Great Vault with 20s anymore, because like whenever 10.15 comes out, then these items are going to be a lot less dead.
We think it'll probably be applied retroactively, although we're not sure, but we do think that, yeah.
Normally they try to apply these things retroactively. I guess it's not like 100% confirmed, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Cool.
I think that's it for us this week. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Any final thoughts, Dratnos?
Nope, that's it for us. We'll see you next week. Later.
Bye.